Raton to order. Could we have roll call, please, Michael Ann?
Mayor Sagata.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Schuster.
Present.
Commissioner Chatterley.
Present.
Commissioner Chavez.
Present.
Commissioner Giacomo.
Present.
Could you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I want to welcome everybody here this evening. Our next regular commission meeting is Tuesday, July 28th, 2020, 6 p.m. here in the chambers. This time we will take items from citizens present, or if you're here to address the commission about something in the business portion, I ask that you wait until that time. Seeing no one, we will move on to committee reports from commissioners. Commissioner Chatterley.
I don't have anything I'd like to share tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Giacomo.
No meeting, no report.
Okay.
Ditto.
I do have just one announcement that from the Center for Community Innovation is that the Visitor Center will be closed until further notice.
Alrighty. I have a couple of things, I guess. This morning with the New Mexico Municipal League, we held our first policy meeting. This was the public safety meeting. There were about 37 virtual attendants, ranging from certification of police officers statewide to the fire fund and everything. We went through approximately 11 resolutions, ranked them, got that done. A lot of concern with the police chiefs over Senate Bill 8 that was passed in the special session, directly quoting the chief from Farmington, who I respect greatly, says it was a piece of crap. So that's how that went. As far as updates from the governor's task force, last week the governor put out an op-ed and basically said that she's on an island by herself. That's how she feels. She was not getting any support from her mayors. She even went to the point of calling out that if she has to do something to remove some people from office, she will. Basically, that's what the last sentence said in that op-ed. Naturally, that didn't go well with a bunch of the mayors. So we responded to that. I signed off on that letter. And all we said was, look, we've been here from the beginning. All we have ever asked for is a seat at the table. You gave us that seat at the table, but you didn't provide us any menus, basically. So that's where we are there. It should be a very interesting meeting Thursday. Not a big fan right at the moment, sorry. That's all I have. Moving on to action items. 7A, approval of the June 23rd, 2020 regular commission meeting minutes. Those were within your packets. If there were some minor grammatical corrections made.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with those minor corrections.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as amended. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, presentation of Colfax County Affordable Housing Plan by Monica Abeda, Executive Director of North Central New Mexico Economic Development District. Mr. Berry.
Mayor, Jason is going to get Monica on the phone here in a minute. I'll do a little, a couple of words here in preparation of that. And then Monica will walk you through the plan that's presented to the commission. And then under the next item, we would give the commission a resolution to consider adoption of the plan by the city of Raton. So I think you all have a copy of the plan, and during Monica's presentation, we'll ask you to follow along page by page as we go through that. I would kind of give you just the basics here of this. Of course, in prepping the plan, as it states in the resolution, we are meeting some requirements that are listed in the state's Affordable Housing Act and rules. The Affordable Housing Act and rules are under the New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority, and in the preparation of this, we are working primarily, the funding for this operation is through a grant from MFA. Colfax County is the lead agency on this, although this is a multi-jurisdictional plan. You'll see that all of the Colfax County municipalities are addressed in here, participated in the preparation of the plan. Certainly in Raton, we had an appointed task force that included our housing director, Mr. Baca, here. So we got some valuable input from stakeholders, from our task force, and of course staff has worked on this for a while. The plan has been prepared by Monica as the executive director of the North Central New Mexico Economic Development District, and her staff, and they have very capably worked on the plan. Monica has been to Raton a number of times, and we've spent a considerable amount of time with her looking at specific things that are pertinent to Raton. So I can tell you that our concern was that we wanted to avoid having a cookie cutter plan, and we wanted something that really met the needs of Raton, and I think we have that. And so, Jason, if you could maybe ask Monica to join us, and we'll turn this over to her for her presentation. She has done this quite a bit, and so she is ready to answer your questions, give you information on this, and we're going to concentrate really on the Raton portion of this. Certainly we can talk about anything countywide, but we're going to focus on what is applicable to Raton.
Hello, this is Monica.
Hi Monica, this is Jason. You are on with Raton City Commission.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Monica. How are you?
Good, how are you all?
We're doing well, doing well. So we are ready and willing and I guess able to listen to your presentation about the affordable housing plan. So the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This is the Mayor, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Since I can't see you guys. Okay, great. So I understand from Scott that you all have a copy of the affordable housing plan. So I'm gonna obviously not, in the interest of time, go through every single page. I'll focus on the recommendations for Raton, and I'll provide a little bit of overview, and then you're welcome to ask me any questions or follow up that you all want. We have something in New Mexico kind of similar to the Local Economic Development Act, which is called the Affordable Housing Act, and most local governments, a lot of local governments have heard of LEDA, but not the Affordable Housing Act. But it's pretty much a partner to LEDA. It is a act which allows for local governments to make donations for the purposes of affordable housing, provided that they adopt a plan and an ordinance. And so this is basically to, you can probably imagine, there have been instances where local governments have given away land or homes or things like that to people that were their friends or to contractors, or this is to prevent, just improper donations of local resources or state resources for housing. So this is the plan that enables that process. When I was at MFA, I used to work for the Mortgage Finance Authority. We started trying to get communities to do plans that were more of this nature, where they adopt a county-wide plan that has sections for the different communities within the county. This is just more cost-effective for everybody, and really, the local governments, the municipalities, can adopt the same plan the county does, and it's just a more efficient process. So I think in doing this plan, Colfax County and the municipalities in Colfax County are way ahead of some of the other communities in the state. So with that said, that's the reason for doing the plan. Colfax County has already adopted it, and you're the second community I'm presenting this to after Colfax County. So I'm going to go to page 3 of the plan, which kind of shows you what the Mortgage Finance Authority expects in these plans. And in this case, the Mortgage Finance Authority kind of acts like the Economic Development Department does for LEDA. they're the ones that approve the plan and approve the donations for affordable housing. So the MFA expects that we address all the different housing needs across the spectrum. They don't want us to just look at homeowners, for example. They want to make sure we look at renters, we look at homeless population, people who might have special needs, and to take all of those things into account. So that's kind of, the reason the plan is so comprehensive. If we look at page, let's see, I'm going to skip around a lot. One of my markers might have fallen out. Okay, I'm going to look for the page. But normally the way that we do these plans, and we couldn't really do it this way for Colfax County and the communities of Colfax County because there's just some unique conditions that make it difficult. We normally look at, if you go to page, for example, page 48, there's a graph there and a little chart. We try and look at who is in the community and what are the income levels of those households. And normally what HUD considers to be affordable is if your housing is equal or less than 30% of your income. Now, obviously, somebody with a really high income can afford to pay whatever they want for housing, 50%, 70% of their income. But for people that are living on, lower incomes, 30% is a good guideline because they need money for health care and, transportation and other costs. So, what we find in New Mexico typically is there are kind of a lot of households that are very low income, and this is broken out kind of the way HUD defines it. 30% area median income is how HUD defines extremely low income households. Those are typically households that earn less than $15,000 a year. And you can see on that chart, there's 687 of those households, an estimated 687 of those households in Colfax County, almost 500 of which are in the city of Raton. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what we're dealing with here. And these are renters. This is not homeowners at this point. And so then we break it out by the other HUD categories. Usually 80% and below is considered low income. So all of those categories under 80% equal low income. And then 120% and below is considered moderate income. So those folks at 120%, between 80 and 120% are moderate income renters. That's where you're going to see more of your professional workforce fall, is in that category. 60% AMI, actually 50% AMI is considered very low income by HUD, but I'm using 60% here because that's the typical limit for the low income housing tax credit program, which is a federal program that subsidizes a lot of the rental housing in our country. So I use 60% instead. But here you can see a breakout of the different households and those income ranges. If you go to page 53, you'll see a breakout of the homeowners into those same categories. And what you'll see, of course, as you would expect, homeowners are higher income than renters. And so there's a lot more households in the moderate and above income ranges for homeowners. So normally when we do one of these plans, we look at how many households are in each income category, and then we look at the housing in the community, and we say, do those two things match? And to give you an example, I just did the plan for Taos County and the town of Taos, and those things don't match in Taos. You have a lot of low-income people, there's pretty low incomes in Taos, and you have a really high cost of housing. So there's a mismatch between the cost of housing and incomes, and then you have to come up with programs and solutions to fill those gaps. It's kind of a different situation in Colfax County, or at least for the communities like Raton and the other communities along I-25, and I'm including Cimarron in this discussion, in that your housing costs are really affordable. You have pretty affordable housing, both in terms of rentals and in terms of home ownership. And so, when I talk to, for example, Terry at the Public Housing Authority, he doesn't have a really long waiting list for people because a lot of people, even at that lower income level, can find housing on the private market. It's the opposite in Taos, where he's also managing the Public Housing Authority now. he has a huge waiting list in town because people can't find housing on the public market, so on the private market. So you have a pretty friendly private housing market, which is a good thing. The other thing that's complicating a little bit, I think, about Raton is that you have some invisible factors, I'm going to call them. One of them is invisible demand. You have some workforce that's coming from the outside to work in the community. And so when we just look at the households within Raton, we're not counting those people and we don't really know who they are. And then the other thing is you have a lot of invisible housing stock because you have a high number of vacant homes and buildings that could be converted to housing. So, you know, you have some real assets and some real, I think, potential to work with. It's just, you know, you can't really do this typical analysis that goes into these plans for Raton. So, so this is going to be a little bit different. Before I get into the recommendations for the city specifically, are there any questions about that framework?
Any questions for Monica?
I don't have any questions.
Not at this time.
Okay.
Go on.
So I'm going to jump to page 58, which is the 57 and 58, which starts the recommendations for the city. So I'm going to go ahead and start, well, I'll just start at the top of the list. So you are really the only place in the county that's providing any kind of services or housing for people who need transitional housing, who might be homeless, who might have special needs. All the other communities say that they're coming to you or sending people to places like Taos or Albuquerque, but they just don't have any resources for them. And it looked like from our survey of the local service providers that you have a number of organizations that are already working on this issue and are already working to set up a number of transitional housing units within Raton, so there's a place for these people to go, at least on a temporary basis. I don't think it's a huge need. I put there 5 to 10 units, and I know there's already some partnerships going on with like Dream Tree, Youth Shelter in Taos, where they're already renting some units in the city for youth. So I think that, you know, it sounds like you have capable providers that are already working on that issue, but it seems like this is a specific recommendation for Raton. For renters, now you have several different groups of renters. The first group is your extremely low-income renters. Most of these people are living in the housing authority units or in the private market. These are the people that make less than $15,000 a year. You have the good fortune of having an extremely well-run public housing authority, which not everybody does. So, you know, you walk up to the sites, they're well-maintained, and, you know, obviously they're very well-managed. So the waiting lists are not very long. There are some different things I think Terry is looking at by virtue of now taking over the Northern Regional Housing Authority, where he can do some things to kind of scale up in terms of like building maybe scattered site projects across different communities. That could even involve Las Vegas or Taos and Raton. So there's a few recommendations that he can look at there. But in general, it seems like, you know, the waiting lists are not so long in that area that I don't think you need a whole lot of units. And you can probably get them out of other development projects that you're going to do for the populations below that, the 60 to 120% renter population. So I think that there is a need for about, and I'm making a really big guess here because during this whole COVID-19 crisis, it's really been hard to talk to employers, but I think there's probably a need for about 100 units. And I think we need to do a survey of employers, and I'd be glad to help with that at North Central if you all want me to really get a better handle on, you know, how many employees, how many are coming from the outside, how many can't find housing, what are their income levels, to kind of flesh out these recommendations a little further. It was just really hard to get anyone to call us back about this stuff during the past few months. But basically, what we're recommending is a two-pronged approach. One is rehabbing some of your vacant homes to meet the workforce needs in the community. And two is developing some new units, and that could be, again, through rehabilitation of like a commercial building or some of your schools. I think you have at least one, maybe two really attractive schools that could be repurposed as housing. And really to try to meet a lot of your rental needs not just a segment of them, but a larger range of rental needs in those developments. So, going all the way up to your professional workforce, but even maybe including a few units for transitional housing. You could really look at all of those in one development. Senior housing is a big demand in Colfax County, so the plan recommends that you include a substantial number of senior housing units. Typically, you want to use a universal design so that there are walk-in showers and, accessibility is very good in those units. So I think, creating a development like that would be a really good fit for Raton. I do say in this plan that I don't think Raton is a really good candidate for a low-income housing tax credit project because the scoring on those projects is so dependent on a really high growth rate and also low vacancy rates. So it might be worth having a meeting with the Mortgage Finance Authority, but I think, I don't know how successful it would be. And so that, that's really usually the funding source you go to for affordable housing. The other thing about low-income housing tax credits that I want to point out that's on page 61 is that if you build a low-income housing tax credit project, there's a lot of regulation that goes into these projects. You're basically committing to, I think, about 45 years of affordability, and you can build some market rate units into these projects. It's not like you're prohibited from doing that, but a lot of the units are going to be income restricted. And if you look at page 61 and you see the income limits, it basically cuts out any professional workforce. I mean, it really leaves you with a lot of lower income tenants. And I think what I saw in this plan is you have a great need to house your workforce, and some of those people make a lot more money than is shown in that chart. So I don't even know if low-income housing tax credits are a good fit for Raton in terms of that, because you really need to house more of your workforce. So I think that, there's a number of ways to do this, and I really recommend, a meeting after this meeting to talk about implementation. Who does what is a big part of this. Is there a local organization that takes this on? Do we help you at North Central get some of this off the ground? It's just a question of, how we get this done. First-time homebuyers, I think there's a really big opportunity there because your housing costs are so low, and rehab would be such a great revitalization tool. Even though you already have a lot of that going on, there could be more. What we heard is that there's just not, there's good mortgage products out there, but that first of all, some of the home buyers aren't ready for home ownership. They need to get counseling and they need to be ready to qualify. And second of all, they often are ready to move into a home and it's not move-in ready. It doesn't meet the standards of the mortgage product. So one of the big recommendations that I made for the county overall is that we look at some kind of home buyer assistance fund that could provide grants or low interest loans to rehab either homes that are going to be resold or sold, or to rehab homes that can be rented to your workforce. And I think we could look at a number of funding sources for this. There could be some philanthropic money. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Jessica Barfield that mentioned some regional money through the hospital. And, there's just there's also some low interest loans we could look at if you wanted to do it that way. But really, if you operated this as a revolving fund, even if you started with $100,000 or $200,000 and you were doing $10,000 rehabs on homes, when those homes resell, that money comes back in and you can use it to get another home fixed. So I think it could be a really successful program to get the housing market churning. And finally, there is a great need, as you know, for home rehab for people that want to stay in their homes, that are living in their homes now, especially for the senior population, and because you have a high number of seniors. And there's not a lot of programs or money for this. We're actually trying to work on this at non-metro AAA and getting some funding together and perhaps some pilot programs together to match up seniors that need either retrofits or home rehabs and funds. And so I'm looking forward to working with the mayor on that project. It's just in here as a recommendation. But right now, the funding sources for home rehab are so limited that not a lot of people can apply or get into those programs. So that's a summary of the recommendations for Raton. Starting on page 82, there's a bunch of different affordable housing tools Some of them are discussed for the city of Raton. Some of them, as you'll notice, are like relevant for Angel Fire or Eagle Nest, which have a totally different set of recommendations. But on 82, it does talk about, low-income housing tax credits, how you involve employers and developer partnerships, community land trusts. There's a lot of descriptions of a lot of different things that could be done or implemented, and it's just a matter of putting those tools together to basically, get underway with the plan. So with that, I'd be glad to stand for any questions.
Okay, Monica, thank you. Yeah, a very good presentation. I, for one, would be very interested in like a home rehabilitation project. I think that would be a tremendous asset for the city of Raton. Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Aveda?
Monica, this is Lori Chatterley. I just wanted to thank you guys for making sure that it was custom and not cookie cutter, especially for Raton and our differences from Angel Fire and Eagle Nest. I think that you've done a wonderful job of trying to point that out and look at things that might work for us, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a totally different housing market in the two areas. I mean, they couldn't be more different. So they're really closer to, the town of Taos and Taos County recommendations. And I just think you guys have so many opportunities, and it fits so well with your economic development strategy. It's just getting things kind of rolling because, if you want to make it easy for these employers to maybe move some of their workforce to Raton, and you have a program that's just really set up where they can just plug and play, and it's really, well oiled, and they don't have to do a ton of work. I think that you'll have a lot of traction. It's just kind of getting this going so that if there's no place for people to live, or a perception that there's no place for people to live, or it's hard because they have to do a lot of rehab or whatever, then it kind of makes it a more difficult proposition. But I just think, you just have such great opportunities here. You really do.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Everybody's shaking their head no, Monica, so you must have done a great job there.
Well, I hope you all have me over so we can talk about how to implement it. That's the hard part.
Absolutely. No, that was a fantastic presentation. Appreciate all the hard work that North Central has put in, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Same here. Same here, everyone. Feel free to call me if you have any questions or you want to talk offline about any of the recommendations.
All righty. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, very good presentation. With that, we would move right into item C, deliberate and act on resolution 2020-47, adoption of the Coal Heights County Affordable Housing Plan. Mr. Berry, any comments?
Mayor and Commission, I would just comment that in our discussions with Monica, we tried to really coordinate with our economic development plan and also our efforts on the comprehensive plan update. We'll talk about the comprehensive plan update a little later in the meeting here, but we really want to have all of those elements dovetail together. And of course, we talked about under economic development plan, workforce development is one of the more challenging elements of that. And of course, workforce development housing is a part of workforce development. And so we have a big challenge there. As we stated when we talk about economic development plan, we're pretty far ahead in a couple of those items: downtown revitalization and outdoor recreation. And then as we go to the area that we're most challenged at is probably that workforce development piece, and the housing is in there as well. So I think we're really at the beginning of a process here. Monica did say that she would like to stay engaged with us, and I think certainly we need those services going forward. So I look forward to working with them on the future, and not put a plan on the shelf, but incorporate it into our overall efforts. And I think we've got really competent expertise there that we can call on. And so hopefully we can continue on and talk to you about additional goals and accomplishments in this area. But I think it's really a good plan. I was really pleasantly surprised by the plan and the resources that are named in there. So very happy about the formatting of the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Yeah, I worked with Monica with the senior citizens and the area agency on aging, and she doesn't do anything halfway. I mean, she's very thorough. She's always got a plan, and I've had great success with her and partnering with her with our senior program. So
Well, it is a good informative
it
report.
is very good.
It's excellent.
I mean, this one you could read and not go to sleep. To be
Exactly.
quite frank.
Well, I will move to approve the resolution 2020-47, adoption of the Colfax County Affordable Housing Plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2020-47, the Colfax County Affordable Housing Plan. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item D, this is public hearing night. We have public hearing for infrastructure capital improvement plan, spit it out there now. Better known as the ICIP for fiscal year 2022-2026. I did all my speaking this morning as the chairman of that other meeting, so bear with me. Mr. Berry?
Mayor and Commission, I would preface the public hearing part as just an introduction to our discussion on the infrastructure capital improvement plan. And in your packet, I have included the plan that was approved by the commission last year. Don't let it bother you that it says 2022 to 2026. That's just the way that this particular thing works out. We'll actually be working on 2023 next. This is last year's plan, and these are the priorities that were set by the commission at that time. Now, a couple of things. I think that we would really want to take the time to evaluate these priorities, look at them and work on them. One thing I would bring up is that our outdoor recreation task force has been active. They've been meeting. We've had a telephone conference with Axie Navas from Economic Development Department, the Outdoor Recreation Division, and then Christy Tafoya from State Parks. And one thing that we talked about that we can really do to benefit that partnership and be a part of the regional outdoor recreation development is look at our trail development plan. So that's something that the task force is in serious discussions on. They've got some consulting work to rely on about what that might look like. And I think we'll, as we go through the ICIP process, we'll talk about that more. Now, Commissioner Chatterley is very active in that task force, and so I think that the Commissioner will have some comments on that. That's one item that I think we had included in the ICIP, maybe as a placeholder kind of thing, and then now it'd probably be timely to really look at that and where that fits in our list of priorities. There are some other things that we talked about. We did talk about some equipment, some defibrillators that we would probably mention to the commission that would be added to all of our ambulances, actually replacing some older obsolete equipment. And so we'll put that together and bring, those are a couple of items that we would probably mention as potential priorities that haven't necessarily been listed as priorities in the past. So I think we got some work cut out for us this year in the ICIP. Some of the things that we've listed and as priorities in there, we've had some luck in funding, and so we'll evaluate where those are at. Listed at number one in last year's plan was patrol car replacement, and we emphasized that we were really seeing a hit on the general fund by keeping some of these 8 or 10 or year-old vehicles or older operational. And so we did get some legislative appropriation funds for this. We think that we can purchase 7 or 8 new vehicles, That item doesn't go away, but I think that that would do a lot to increase our reliability of that fleet and reduce the costs on the general fund. Now, going forward in that particular item, I think I'd like to see a replacement of a couple of vehicles a year. We may have talked about this, but we have budgeted for 14 officers, and we generally assign a vehicle, so that's kind of what the fleet looks like. We had some luck with funding on that this last year, so that's another thing that we'll talk about when we're talking about priorities. Now, in general, I would say that like a lot of things this year, the deadline for submission of our ICIP has been moved back. We normally would look at the adoption of the final plan and the priorities by the commission by the last meeting in August. I think we have a little more time. I'm thinking the end of September. I don't have that final plan, but I'll report back to you. I would just plan on talking about the ICIP really at every meeting between then and now. And of course, we've listed this as a public hearing, and the public input is important in this. So throughout the year, we get a lot of input from people, and they talk about things that should be reflected in here. Right now, we're getting a lot of input from folks talking about the need for bear-proof dumpsters, a particular issue that we've had over the last month with the dry summer. So that would be a capital improvement issue, and we'd like to see people bring up things like that during this process. We hear people talk about drainage issues. We hear people talk about the need for street improvements, those kind of things. And I would surely encourage the public to make your input known during this process. We do have probably about 2 months to do that. And a person does it, they can appear at the commission meeting, a public hearing like this, and provide their comments, but that's not the only way to make comments. They can write their comments and send it by mail. You can send us an email. There are a number of ways to give us your input. You can call us on the phone. So however they're most comfortable in doing that, public input is very important in establishing these priorities. And I will hold up there, answer questions that the commission has, and let you proceed with the public hearing, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Are there any questions for Mr. Berry?
Yeah, on the, there's 35 items on the ICIP, and the only one that I could find pertaining to the trail, Commissioner Chatterley, is the one that's the bike trail. But I think that it's very interesting that this should be moved up in our ICIP. I really do, because of the outdoor ramifications of it.
Yeah, that's the one, the Highway 72 pedestrian/bicycle trail. And so what's interesting is Emma Green had already, there was a group of grad students, and she said, hey, for your thesis, why don't you come up and do a project and figure out how we could do this? And they did. They came up and put this together, and Mr. Berry has looked at it. Tyler Davis is on the task force, and he's looked at it. It's actually an actionable document that we could start building from, town out, and then hopefully partnering with the county. But it's basically creating lanes, markings, whatever it is, and then in some places shoulders are necessary to make that work. So they've looked at the really expensive way to do it, the nice way, and they've looked at kind of, the cheapest way to do it, and some other options in between. So that's definitely, I would love to see that moved up on the plan. I think it adds value with us in the state park. It adds to, as we're developing workforce, a lot of those quality of life amenities are gonna become important. I know we have things on the list that are absolute needs that we can't fund other ways, and I think those are incredibly important too, but those things that connect, basically, when we met, we were trying to decide how this trail should, what trail are we all talking about? And it's a trail that will connect downtown Raton to Sugar Creek Canyon. That's what we're looking at. So those downtown elements that would also revitalize that area or improve the green space down there with Roundhouse Park are all things that kind of play together to make that just a more attractive outdoorsy area and make that connection. So there's that one. There's some other stuff on here that, I've had people complain. The last thing on here is the lighting out there at that roundhouse trail, and I see people walking there all the time. That could be a safety thing as we have more people out. That might be something we consider phasing in or moving up a little closer. I know when Emma first came to us, we're just thinking, okay, yeah, we'll put your trail to Sugar Reed on our plan, you know, and not really seeing the potential of it. But now, I think the other important thing when considering the ICIP is to, at least up to this point, it's been a state trend to be focusing on outdoor recreation. And so to have something that looks, you know, looks appealing at the state level, I think that's important depending on what happens with the budget there. So.
Is there a chance that we could get funding from state or outdoor facilities?
Well, so on the phone call we had, which I didn't know exactly everything we were talking about there, but they were talking about land water conservation funds.
Yeah, so the federal program that we're looking at, it's the lock-on program, Land and Water Conservation Fund. It's something that you see a lot of signs around for. We use those funds to build the soccer field. We used them way back when to build a lot of tennis courts, those kind of things. It's federal funding program, but I think with the environment today, there's some additional funding going to lock-on, and we would anticipate pursuing some lock-on funds. There's also a Youth Conservation Corps program that we would look at how we could incorporate that, maybe create some jobs in a YCC program and use that in a leveraging type of fashion for that. So we've got some work to do ahead of us. It's not something we've done for a few years, but there's some good potential there now. Now I think that in looking at the ICIP, every year we talk about a little strategy as well. And I know in the first couple of years here, we had requested and listed as a very high priority our solid waste transfer station, and we consistently got shot down at the legislature. And I asked one of the legislators, this is basic infrastructure, something the town really needs, and they just were not excited about that request. But yet, in this last legislature, we got full funding for our industrial park building. And so I think you have to really be in touch if you're looking at capital outlay with legislators and also with the administration as far as you know what their vision is. And so we have to have a little bit of alignment there, and I think we have to you know, rank it here and then also be on the same page as them down there. And that's where building those relationships in Santa Fe are so important. And so I think that's why I mentioned the contact with Axie Navas and with Chrissy Tafoya. You know, it takes some time to build those relationships. They're giving us their input. That's extremely valuable. And so we want to have a little bit of alignment with what they're saying.
One more thing, Mr. Mayor. I do want to mention in that meeting we had the superintendent from Sugar Reed with us as well and discussed what they need inside Sugar Reed. And he expressed that the trail needs inside Sugar Reed are very small, very easy, very manageable. They don't need a lot of help with that. What they need is for us to connect town better. And so that was
Sure. I think that fits with what seems to be our ongoing growth is as an outdoor destination. That's what we're focusing on these days, especially with what's happening across the hill. So I think it's a very, very doable.
It's really important, but I don't see where it can move up to. I don't see anything less important
Well,
above it. Do you have an idea?
if I'm correct, the steel building, we've got the funds for that still, correct? The industrial building?
We have that funded, yes.
So there's a spot there. We are doing a little bit of road construction through the CDBG.
Now, I would say this, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Commission, I think if we're looking at some funding through the lock-on program and we're looking at some other leveraging, where it ranks on the ICIP is probably not an important factor in getting that funding. So I think that it depends highly on where we plan on going for funding. Some of these things, if we are funding it entirely in-house, of course, it doesn't matter where it falls. And so if we're talking about something like the lighting project, that would, it doesn't have to be, but traditionally, that is all some in-house funding, or even if it's at the very end of the ICIP, as long as, you know, locally here we make it a priority. There's a little bit of that strategy that goes in there. So I know the legislature is one place where they really look at your ranking here. CDBG is a place that they would really consider how you rank a project that you applied for CDBG funds. There are some other places, and then there are places you go for funding where they really don't consider this at all. So I think that's something to factor into this prioritization that we're doing.
As an example, you're going to see the senior center renovations in that. It's number 11. I know if we're in the top 15 on our municipalities' ICIP plans, it's just like 5 extra rating points when they rate projects. So, you know, it's just a matter of what factors are used to determine
I go down the list a little bit. Great Blocks project, you know, we're for that. Now that we're not done with downtown revitalization, but for the Great Blocks project, we're in construction now. This would be the final phase of that. That project we're calling fully funded, so we can consider that. I think we would have some sort of a downtown revitalization component in the ICIP, but it wouldn't be that particular one. Patrol cars is not leaving the list, but we would probably adjust the place on that. Those are a couple of things where we'll talk about where we fall with the priorities. Now, I would also say that from year to year, we don't want to move up, move down, move up, move down. That confuses people that really look at this as well. So some consistency also is important. So I'm not suggesting that you know, we throw this out and really do something drastically different, but some strategy involved there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murray. Any other comments? Any comments from the public that is here? Just smiling. That's a good sign. All right. Thank you. As I stated, this was just a public hearing for the ICIP. Item E is also a public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 City of Raton budget. Michael Ann?
Mayor and Commission, as we reported at the last meeting, we're still working on our final budget, which will be due by July 31st. So we anticipate bringing that final budget to the Commission at the July 28th meeting. We do anticipate that we may need a special meeting next week, so that we're still in the process of closing out the fiscal year so that we can finalize our ending cash balances. So those balances will roll forward and become the July 1 beginning cash, and also need to include those on the final budget. So as we work on completing that fourth quarter report, closing everything out, we'll do one last budget adjustment. So all of the reports will be due by July 31st. So I don't know if everybody would be available to meet next week, but we could certainly contact you and finalize that to post an agenda probably on Friday.
Okay.
So that's kind of the plan right now, and then we would have a good draft. We're still meeting with department heads, working on some personnel schedules. As of today, we hadn't received the gross receipts tax report, so we're still kind of anxiously awaiting that to see kind of what the impact may be, and that might drive some of our decisions as we move forward on the budget. So hopefully we'll receive that report tomorrow. Scott, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Mayor and Commission, as we've stated before, it's a little bit of a different process this year, and because of the unpredictability of the revenue side. And so I think that normally we would bring a budget adjustment resolution to the commission at least once a month. We do a number of those through the year as things change, but I really would state that I'm looking at how the first quarter comes in and then maybe really revisit a lot of the things in the budget again based on what specifically the GRT distribution would look like. And so you know, I would say that we talk about things that normally we would have already talked about and incorporated into the budget. And we've kicked down the road a little bit here in this process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berry. Any other comments, questions? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you. Item F, deliberate and act on fiscal year 2021 lodgers tax non-promotional fund proposals. Raton Arts Council and Raton Museum. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commissioner, once again, I could kind of preface the presentations here. We have parties here to discuss their proposal with the commission. Again, we're looking at a different type of setup than normal. I think normally in that budget preparation period, we would talk about how to allocate lodgers tax funding, and we would have a little confidence in projecting revenues on lodgers tax. We really have not done that so far, and we're well into July now, and we're talking about lodgers tax appropriations. We've talked about a couple of items before now, but we're really getting back to this at this time. And it's because we don't have that confidence with the revenue side. Now, I've asked the treasurer to look at some of the data. I've talked about that with some of you. I think that Michael Land has got some indicators of where we're going with lodgers tax on the revenue side. The thing I would talk about real quickly is accrued funding. And so on the non-promotional specifically, I can tell you that we've spent or committed a substantial amount of the accrued funds to some projects that we have had. Now, we've talked about some restoration work at the Schuler Theater since the beginning of 2020, and the work is proceeding along. Right now, we're down to some items that there were some decisions to make on ceiling, on the bar assembly that we've got, on flooring, those kind of things. And I think we just need to finish that up and we'll wrap up the project. But if we knew at that time what we know now on that, I don't know if we would probably delay that project. Now, I'm glad that we're getting it done. I think it's going to be a great project for the Schuler, and when we resume operations there, I think we'll be really glad that we have that project done. But as I've told some of you, I think that we could wind up with a cost of $60,000 to $70,000 out of non-promotional funds for that project. So working on an old building, you get a few surprises, and it's not inexpensive. But I'm glad that we're doing the project, but it's got a fairly steep price tag. Now, down the agenda here, we're going to talk about work on the convention center, and I would tell you in advance that I think that that's really essential that we do that. We knew about the revenue picture when we proceeded into this project, but we really don't have a choice. What we'll talk about is replacing the boiler. Meaning if we did not do this now, we would go into next year without the ability to heat that building. And then we'll address the lack of temperature control in the gym. We'll talk about recirculation system, pumps and piping, and you'll see the price on that. But the bottom line is we are committing a significant part of our accrued funds in non-promotional, and then we're looking at a significant decline of projected revenues. Now, with the data that we have right now, and in talking to our treasurer, my best estimate would be to plan on about a 50% decline in lodger's tax overall. Again, I think we would come back after the first quarter and revisit that, and we could, hopefully we do better. Maybe we don't do that well, but I think we can revisit that. I think it depends on one thing, that's business volume at lodging facilities, and I don't really see, I'm not forecasting that restrictions are going to be lifted during the summer when we really make a lot of this revenue. I think we're going to stay in place, or there could be actually some additional closures. And so y'all see the news, you can make your best judgment on that, but that's probably our guidance to you with very limited data would be about a 50% decline in lodger's tax revenues. And so with that, Michael Ann has put together some information for you, and I would call on her to review that.
Mayor and Commission, in your packet, we did give you a Excel spreadsheet that's got your monthly lodger's tax revenue. And so that spreadsheet actually shows you the trends for the past 6 years. You'll see prior to February this year, our revenues actually were on target to probably exceed what we had taken in for 2018, 2019. And then starting in March, when the COVID restrictions went into place, we started to see declines. So for March, April, May, our revenues declined almost $31,000 just for those 3 months. And so we still don't have the totals for the month of June, but you'll see that that's actually a month where we normally would collect close to $40,000. So if that one comes in at half, then for the last 4 months, our decline would be closer to $50,000. So that is very concerning to us as we try to build this budget, not knowing what the remainder of the summer is going to look like. So today I just kind of put a pencil to paper and kind of gave you a copy of what was in our interim budget for the lodger's tax non-promo fund. Right now I have an estimated beginning cash balance of $232,311. I anticipate in the first quarter we will spend close to $200,000 of that just on the convention center, the Schuler, our insurances for property insurance that'll be due to New Mexico Self-Insures, and then we also have the elevator maintenance, which we just paid that bill this week. So, you know, those are some expenses that come due right immediately in the next couple months. So we're going to be kind of starting this first quarter with very little in reserve. So, you know, cash flow is kind of an issue with the lodger's tax, so we want to kind of monitor this as closely as we can. In red, I've just kind of indicated some changes that I'm going to need to make to this for the final budget. And then, of course, tonight you have the 2 proposals for the museum and the Arts Council. The Schuler management contract, that actually will expire next month, so we'll have to bring probably a new memorandum of understanding to the commission to consider that contract as well. And then the Raton Country Club, that one would probably come back to you at a later date. So for now, I would just zero that line item out, and then we'll see later on in the year if they come back with a proposal what we could actually afford to do there. Other than that, based on the estimates that I've prepared here, I'm anticipating, and this is very conservative, it could be come in a lot less, but I'm estimating lodger's tax revenue to be closer to $310,000. That would be the annual collection, and so we've typically in the last 4 years, we've consistently been over $400,000 every year. This was going to be a big year for us because of Dawson. Generally, we collect a lot more lodger's tax in the years that they have the Dawson reunion, but 60% of the 310,000 would mean that we're putting 186,000 into the non-promo fund for the year. I'm also going to zero out the line item. A couple years ago, you did a one-time transfer of 20,000 from the non-promo to the promotional. We didn't do that this past year, and I don't think we need to do that again. So just to kind of get everything to, balance out, that would leave an estimated ending cash balance of 13,347. And so I am taking into consideration the amount of the two proposals that you have before you this evening, and I did leave in the Schuler's 16,500, so that's in that figure. So the commission, based on whatever decisions you make tonight, I'll plug those figures into the final budget, and then we would have to do budget adjustments later on after that budget's approved.
All righty, thank you. Yeah, we've had several discussions about this in the last few days. One thing that was brought up that we now have, and we don't exactly know what costs are going to be associated with that, is the depot. We own that building now, and with that building comes associated costs. Very unique time indeed. I'm in concurrence with Mr. Berry that I don't foresee any relief on the health order side for our motels this summer. Maybe towards the end of the summer, maybe something, but I really don't anticipate that. And then we move into the winter. So open for suggestions here, folks. I guess at this time, we would like to hear from the two that are here instead of just sitting there doing nothing. So, Mr. Baca, I'll throw you on fire first there, bud.
All right.
You're here.
Mayor, Commissioner, we, every year I come to you all, and this year's been an unusual year for everybody, as we all know. We were not able to complete our seasons. We had, the gallery was closed probably the biggest part of the year. I know Brenda did do a cash mob that really did help us and give us a little influx of money. But, without your help, it's going to be hard to keep her employed, is my concern. And I 50% decline, I'd be surprised if it's that high. I think it could be, more like a 60% decline. Because, we're not, I know I see a lot of out-of-state travelers between here and Taos when I go up there. But I think they're feeling more and more unwelcome, so we're not going to see as many, And some of the things that we normally would see are not there. So I feel like I'm trying to get money out of a turnip that doesn't have any blood in it, and obviously looking at, just listening to some of the numbers the county, the city treasurer did speak of, that's pretty scary, actually. But I'm here to promote the Arts Council, so, as you can see, there was an attachment that was sent with it of some of the items that we do and we continue to do. Right now we have a limited schedule. We're open at 1 o'clock rather than 10 o'clock, and we're open 1 to 4. And it's trying to keep some of the traffic out of there, some of the bus traffic, some of the train traffic, because it does happen to be an issue. And we're concerned about our docents that volunteer, and concerned also about our executive director's health. Because we don't know who's coming off the train and who's coming off the buses. But as you can see, we had 1,560 volunteer hours last year, and this is based on the $21 per hour, $21.20. So we had $32,000 in volunteer time. You know, we pay our own utilities, you know, it is a city building, but we do pay our utilities with our phone, our alarm, and it's averages about $4,500 or $450 a month. We still are continuing to do shows. We're doing we did the Shades of the Southwest, which took place in January. Eyes Through His Eyes, that's another one that we went ahead and did. The Art for Mexican Women, it was not very successful because of our closure. But the Solano show, we did do it, and she's in the process of doing all these other shows. She's hanging them, and we're doing them as we can. We've asked the people to be safe and wear masks and to try to keep their social distancing. But you know, these shows don't really bring us a lot of income. I mean, if we sell a piece, we get 30% for what we sell, and you know, we sell very little, to be honest with you. It's just we are providing a service to the community and to the artists. As far as our performing arts season, we presented 5 of our 6 shows. We have purchased shows for next year already, and those shows, you know, that we don't know where we're at. A show that was supposed to happen, I believe, in March, is going to be in January now. We just kept kicking it down the road. So, you know, it just we are still under contract with them, so we still have to have the show eventually. We do host the National Dance Institute every year. She does the Sugar Skull, so as far as education. And we do receive some other grants. We do receive the New Mexico grant, and we are getting that again this year for $5,000. Wyden Foundation, they help us every year, and it's, you know, it kind of depends on their income, and it's a lot of that's based on what interest rates are.
Sure.
And so they're, you know, they don't have any money. They're pretty tight also. The Sloan Prince, they actually pay for the NDI show, so it's kind of just a pass-through on anything. We did get $5,000 from the Macron Foundation this year, which is something we didn't expect, and that was helpful. And obviously, you can see the Darden Foundation. They helped us back when Mr. Darden was still alive, and we haven't been able to get much help out of him since. Lodgers Tax, obviously, you know what you all have done in the past. And then McCoon and New Mexico Children's Foundation, we received very little money there. Our annual membership drive, that's something that we get on the phone, we call people, we send out flyers, we do all kinds of stuff to try to get people to donate, especially towards the end of the year when they need a tax write-off. We're willing to take all that money. And you know, she does charge a hanging fee for every time an artist hangs a piece in the show, and that's $1,600. And like I said down below here, she has 30% of the artist sales is $2,200 basically is what we receive. So it's tight to run this organization. I mean, all I can say is if you can give us any help whatsoever, then anything will be appreciated. But, you know, we know what we need to have, but you know, just like anything, you got to figure out how to cut corners. We will. Is there any questions for anybody?
Any questions for Ms. Walker?
I appreciate, I mean, we get your profit and loss statements every quarter, and we kind of have an idea of the struggle, and we certainly appreciate what you're trying to do.
Yeah, some you know, like, it's funny, I think we made more money in our gift shop than we did in artist sales, especially during the, when they did the cash bombs. People had it. And we were hoping to get some people, you know, just walking in, looking and see, hey, you guys have other things in there besides, you know, just talking, so. We sell a little to the people out the train, not the buses so much, but the train, you know, and they're kind of hit or miss. But I know a couple of the artists, like for example, Carl Swanson, when he sells a piece, whether if he sells it through the gallery or not, he does donate his 30%. So you know, he's very helpful. There's not a lot of them that do that, but he's one of the special ones that does believe in our organization. So cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Kathy, you're next up, and then I guess we'll have some general discussion.
Is that how you want to, okay.
Yeah, while we do that, Kathy.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. And as Terry said, we all know this has been an extremely unusual year and one that is difficult on all tourist attractions, lodging industry, I mean, the whole community as a whole. So we're all in this together, so they say. So unfortunately, we all have different sized boats, but we're all in the same storm, but that's all right. I think, you know, in the proposal that I presented to you, obviously lays out what we normally provide. And, you know, that we're here to help the traveling public and students and researchers and our local, you know, clientele to be able to experience our local history and area history. Just to move forward, you know, we were on a roll last year. We had a lot more visitors and more activities going on. And we were really anticipating a huge year this year for 2020 because we had some additional things going besides Dawson, which we talked about, and that's been postponed till 2021. Actually, this would have been their 50th year. So it was going to be, I think, even larger than what it would have been. And with, throughout the year, last year, the museum participated with the Dawson, New Mexico Association. They received grant monies and are not a 501c3. So we helped them garner those dollars for work at the cemetery. So basically, we were a fiscal sponsor last year for the funding that they received from Freeport-McMoran. So we worked really closely with them, was anticipating doing a video that would run, you know, throughout the whole reunion so that people could come in and out. Again, 2021, we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. Some of the other things that we had planned was we had it all lined up and ready to go the 1st of April for Pasanki art, which is Ukrainian art decorating. And the lady that is very well versed in this had agreed to provide schooling for all of the 5th graders in the whole system to come in. We had it set up where we had 10 to 15, 20 students at a time. They'd come in and do their own egg decorating. It would go on display as well as work that she's done, do a reception, but they would be able to learn some of the pagan art forms. And I mean, it's interesting, it's a lot of fun. We're hoping this next Easter we'll be able to get that going again. So yeah, she had 75 eggs ready to go for the kids to decorate. And so we've just packed all that stuff away and waiting for the next opportunity. We did, through the school closures, provide towards the end of the year, we have sugary coloring books and activity books that was produced by the museum quite a few years back. And so we provided those for all the 2nd graders to have to take home and learn a little bit about our local history and Sugar Eat, and also give them some activities to do while they were at home and not in the schoolhouse altogether. We also entered one thing that we were excited about. Well, obviously, Hops and Vines has still not happened, which we participate with Raton Main Street in order to, it's a fundraiser for their organization. And, you know, we're always happy to partnership in that and provide that venue, and one that, you know, brings in a lot of people into the museum. Last few years, we've had a tour group out of Denver that, you know, brings 30 people down on one of the big tour buses. And obviously that was canceled. That was going to take place in April. Also, as a fundraiser for the museum, again, this is postponed till 2021, was Derby Day. It was scheduled to actually take place on the day of the Kentucky Derby, and the emphasis would be that, as well as we were going to highlight La Mesa Park and have a lot of fun activities and displays in regards to La Mesa Park and doing some of that. So hopefully that'll take place then. We still are hoping that following Truman exhibit and program will still be able to take place. Liz Boomer has shadowed him for over a year and taken photographs and written comments and stories and is in the process of writing a book. And so the photographs were going to be on display for everyone to come and look, and then also a reception was scheduled in regards to that. We may be able to still have an Eagle Nest group. There's a gentleman out of Eagle Nest that has an RV park up there, and he brings a group of people, 15 to 20 people in, and they do a tour. Roger gives them a tour. Obviously, if that does come off this year, Roger probably will not be able to actually walk around and, you know, give them the tour per se, unless we really get the okey dokey to open and have everything going full bore there. As I said, the Dawson reunion also is gone. We're hoping still that we entered a partnership with Vermejo, which is really going to be a great opportunity for us, and we appreciate all the work that they not only do for our organization, but helping other organizations as well, is we're going to start scheduling, and one is scheduled so far in September. We'll kind of see how that goes. It'll be a Dillon Canyon tour, and so Vermejo will provide individual that will give us the actual tour. We'll have people sign up for it. It'll be a fundraiser for the museum, so there will be a charge, and it'll be limited based on what they can handle depending on what we're touring. And so we discussed this in March, and we were all gung-ho. First one would be in September, and then the following April would be the second one. So we're on board to do 2 different tours at different sites throughout Vermejo that has historical significance for our area. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and we're hoping that we can kick that one off in September. Got a couple of presentations and book signing. The one that I have written that we participated in was Dr. Waltz, the Santa Fe's New Mexico Division, Varnish Coal, Copper, and Cattle. He works and writes books, and they're printed through the new Santa Fe Railroad Historical Society. So he is a part of that society. He used actually, I think, 12 or 15 photographs from our collection for this book. So, he's come into our facility and researched and looked at photographs and incorporated them in several of his books. So that book actually was released in June, and again, part of that process is him coming and doing a book presentation and signing. So we're hopeful the Hall of Heroes exhibit will continue in November, one way or the other. And I did lay out here for you guys, we do work with SITES, which is a Smithsonian traveling exhibits, and it's on a smaller scale. They put exhibits together, offer them to various museums and educational facilities throughout the country. And this happened to be one that came up, and I think because of all those closures and stuff, it's something that we really didn't have to pay money for. They're sending them out, so we signed up, and that has to do with the Amendment 19, which was the right for women to vote. So we're anxiously awaiting for that poster exhibit to arrive. In the meantime, they're suggesting that there can be some digital, because they don't know when they can actually release hard copy stuff, so, which is difficult as well. But what we have done is we had prior exhibits which are in our permanent collection, and that is the Bill of Rights and You, which is a National Archives traveling exhibit, and that too is a poster type exhibit, large posters, but posters. Or no, it is not, that's freestanding. The Picturing America, which is through the National Endowment for the Humanities, is a poster exhibit. So we thought it's a perfect opportunity, and with the climate, so to speak, that, emphasizing America's history would be a great way to open up and have people come in and experience that. And we'll have text so that there's a reference as to who Washington was, or, you know, Jefferson and things of that nature. So it's more educational and not just a poster of something, and kind of talk about both sides of issues and be able to present that. So we're anxious, hopefully, to be able to open. I mean, museums are down in phase 3 and we haven't come out of 1 yet. So it's like, are you kidding me? So, you know, we've had conversations with Folsom. I mean, their season is gone. Their season is from May to 1st of September. We're already in July, so I mean, you know, it's hitting everyone all around us. So again, understanding, knowing that no one has a magic ball and we don't know where this is going to go. We would appreciate any funding, because we do have, you know, luckily in December, as Terry said, we had our annual membership drive, and that brings in quite a bit of money, and you know, and we're thankful for that because it helps us, and for the support that we've received from you in the past. I mean, in order to keep our doors open, and we do have some money set aside, not enough at this point, but we are raising funds for roof repairs, just as you guys experience with your facilities, we do as well. So trying to get roof repairs done and a few other things that need to be done. We purchased the building in '04, moved in, did all the renovations, which was a outstanding renovation and revitalization of our downtown district. And we moved in 2008, so we've been in the building 12 years already. It just doesn't even seem possible. 11,000 square feet, we thought, oh, it'll take years and years to fill this. We spent a bunch of time down there through this closure, going through inventory and picking through things. And so at some point, we're going to have a sale and some auctions, and just kind of weed out some of the duplicates that we have and things that really don't pertain to our history. So, again, thank you for allowing us to make this presentation, and we appreciate whatever support we can get.
Right, thank you, Kathy. Right. You know, we are in unique times, and unfortunately, like you said, no one has a crystal ball. Someone does have a ball on the 4th floor in Santa Fe, but I think it's that little crazy 8 ball that you just should I or shouldn't I? You know, I'm open to any comments and discussion through the commission.
Well, I'd like to say to both of you, I appreciate that you've already, in your request, decreased what you asked from the previous years, and it looks like you already took into consideration the fact that there are limited resources to be dipping into.
Yeah, one of the things that Mr. Berry had mentioned too is we need to really look at this, I think, at the worst case as quarter by quarter, you know, what's coming in. Maybe it's something that we could work with you all. Maybe if we could find a way to do something in the first quarter here, and then again after we get some more data in, maybe we readdress it at another time. I'm open to any suggestions, guys.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best. I think it's going to be probably March 2021 before, you know, this pandemic is somewhat under control. So I think that's kind of should be our target date for looking at getting closer to normalcy, as opposed to thinking about November or October of this year. I think we've got several months to go.
Yeah.
My biggest concern is, you know, if we commit funds, which we don't end up getting, because this is just a projection, you know, and we're already, with the low projection, $13,000 away from zero, you know, and that's not, like you said, the depot, all these things are outstanding. And And if it comes in even lower, then even the things we're already committed to, I don't wanna have to dip into the general fund. So I think quarterly basis is fair because we have to give an idea of how much of a hit our lodger's tax is taking. And, one thing, and I don't even know how this could work because I know the promotional funds are different, but, looking, because that fund is a little healthier. But then as the non-promo fund, like we said, we had some bigger projects that were committed. So I don't know how that could be, if there's employees that could help with marketing and things or something like that, if we needed to help fund that with promotional funds. So.
Well, I think the main thing we need to help them do is be able to maintain those employees. That we each have one employee, is that correct? Yeah. And to me, that's the main thing we need to focus on, is helping them maintain the employee who can then look for other avenues of bringing in resources. If you can't do that, then.
And as Michael Ann stated, the 13,000 balance is with these two things fully funded, correct? Yes.
Yes. And then I wanted to mention too, there are some funds that we will not need to spend until later in the fiscal year, such as the fireworks for next year. I've decreased the amount. This year the contract was $23,000, but we do have some reserves in our donation funds that we will utilize for next year's fireworks. I was able to decrease that amount slightly, and then we'll utilize those donations and try to zero out that fund. The audit expense, that's something that occurs later in the fiscal year. So, you do have, and then of course the signage project, I'm not sure when that will start. But there are some funds in here that if things start looking really bad, we could probably delay some of those expenditures if needed. But for the most part, a lot of these expenses are just operation and maintenance of facilities, such as you mentioned, the depot. Convention center is the largest one that we have. So, that maintenance and repair is ongoing all the time.
And is it fair to approve them on a quarterly basis, and then if we see that funds are dropping significantly, then we can visit how best to fund it?
I think that's more than fair. I would going to suggest perhaps even funding half of their request at this time, and then revisit it again as we see what's going on.
Well, because we had talked about losing 50% of it, then also I think it would be fair to pass off the 50% deduction to the two entities too.
Well, I
And
think,
like you said, and then we could visit it as it.
I was looking back on last year, I think they've already cut their request by 50%. Is that true?
The museum did. They were funded at $30,000 last year, and the Arts Council was at $18,000, which is their
We're the same.
current request.
So I'm just imagining that if we can only approve half of what they're asking now, they're already cut their request. That may just not, it's like throwing a quarter at somebody who needs a $5 bill.
At the same time, we have to make sure we have our $5 bill. I think it's both. We don't want you guys to suffer at all. I
We understand.
It would hurt to watch anybody close their doors. I think we're all there. It's not a good thing, but we don't want to close the cities, either. I think it's fair to do a half funding commitment, and then in that time, they can come back and we can hopefully fund the rest. I think.
Or find a way to.
Or find a way, find maybe a different funding source or some other monies.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe things will pick up and we won't have the hit that we're expecting, and that'd be fabulous.
Maybe.
Such
I'm not as
enthusiasm.
optimistic as some
pray a lot.
folks in the room. Yes. Setting that, like I said, we've been asked to the table, but we don't have a menu, so it's hard to be very optimistic. But I think that would be more than fair at this time. But we've got almost $200,000 committed already. we know is a given, I would feel more than,
Yeah, and we're not saying we're not gonna fund the rest.
exactly.
Just, let's see what the next 6 months does, or next 5 months, however that.
You know, I would entertain a motion to fund half of what their request is right now, and then like, again, look at it at the end of the summer when we know what we've got, and go from there. And look for, like Commissioner Chavez said, another avenue if we have to. Maybe there's something we can do with promotion to get some of that money used.
Make sure those
Be-
employees.
Be creative.
May I ask, Michael, is there a way to more or less pocket that second half so that it doesn't accidentally get spent if it doesn't need to be spent on something else?
Well, we could keep these figures in the budget, and then, of course, we'll reflect in the minutes what you approved tonight, and that it would have to come back for approval.
Okay.
So, I mean, you know, the budget,
I think
Sure.
To me, that's the wise way to deal with it, so that it's already set aside. and
otherwise, if we
committed if
just do
possible.
half in the budget, then we would have to do a budget adjustment
Right,
later.
right.
So, I mean, we could say that we're gonna put it in the budget for the full amount, but it would be contingent upon approval for the second half.
Let's do it.
Okay, we have a motion,
I'll second.
and we have a motion and a second then to leave it as it's stated in the budget, but at this time, just recommend
Are you doing 6
50%.
months, 50%?
50% of your guys' request. If that, you know, I know, guys,
No, we appreciate
No,
it.
we would like to do the full amount, but I think we just need to be very cautious at this time.
No.
Well, and we're all aware of that, so I mean, we're experiencing the same thing. I mean, you know,
Exactly.
we
Like-
don't,
Like
we
you
don't
said,
have
you can't
anything
even
coming.
open your doors, Kathy.
No.
I mean, it's
Your hands are tied.
an interesting time. Interesting
I
time.
guess we could, but then we would be subject to maybe not having a 501c3 any longer.
Or
You
get
know,
a $5,000
I'm not
Yeah, well,
gonna,
that
I'm not
too.
gonna dive into that one, but, you know, sometimes you just gotta turn a blind eye.
We appreciate, thank you guys for
Yeah,
your
I agree.
consideration.
I mean, it's a tough time, it's a tough decision for y'all, and I know that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve 50% of the funding for the Raton Arts Council and the Raton Museum at this time. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who made the motion.
Motion was by Commissioner Giacomo, second was by Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, gotcha, thank you.
You're welcome. All righty, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Item G, deliberate and act on resolution 2020-48, acceptance of the New Mexico Department of Transportation Cooperative Agreement Patrol Number L400501 and pledge of matching funds. Mr. Barry.
Mayor and Commission, this item is in regard to a application that was submitted by the city of Raton back in March for the Cooperative Agreement Program through the New Mexico Department of Transportation as part of their local government road fund. The other element of that is the municipal arterial program that we talk about here frequently, and we were notified that we were successful in getting part of the funding for our application. So back in March, we had proposed an amount that would fully fund the reconstruction of Kearney Avenue. We've talked about Kearney Avenue now for a couple of years, and in the previous year, we got a portion of the funding, but we talked about moving that funding to another purpose, a purpose that we'll talk about here later, specifically the crack sealing of asphalt pavement. So we wound up with no funding for Kearney Avenue, so we had applied again in March, and a similar thing happened. We were awarded money, but it's far less than we had requested. The total amount of the grant agreement or notification of award was $58,893. So 75% of that is DOT funds, or $44,170. 25% of that would be Raton's share, and that's $14,723. And so we're doing two things with the resolution. Number one, the commission would, by your consideration of the resolution, would be committing our share of the funds in the amount of $14,723. We would fund that through our gas tax street improvement fund, and we have adequate funding to make that commitment, tell the commission. And then secondly, you would commit to a revised scope of work. And I have a recommendation here for you, which I'll detail out, but it is a recommendation. The commission can take that under advisement, discuss that, revise that if you would so wish. So because we don't feel like we have adequate funds to undertake a project, or really even a portion of the project on Kearney Avenue, we once again are coming to the commission with a recommendation to move the $58,000 and change to a different project. Here in this resolution, I propose to the commission that we commit to a project where we would crush and stockpile city-owned asphalt millings and then use that as the aggregate source in future chip sealing operations. And so you'll recall that a couple of years ago we had a large pile of millings that was delivered to the city from a contractor working on I-25. I would guess that we have about 15,000 cubic yards in our stockpile, and this would be one of the largest recycling projects that we've had in the community, where essentially we would ask for bids to crush that down to a size we could use for chip sealing. Chip sealing rock is fairly small. It's a 1/2 inch to a 5/8 inch rock, and so we would run a portion of the millings through a crusher. I think for the funding that we've got here, we could crush about 1/3 of that pile, about 5,000 cubic yards. And then I would say that that would work as a aggregate source for us for a number of years to come. I would estimate that we would have an aggressive chip sealing program for a lot of our streets in town for about 5 years with that volume of chips on the ground. Now I think that we are going to that as a staple of our street renovation project, the chip sealing. We've had good luck with that on projects that we've done in previous years. What we're facing right now is we're looking at starting on the 5th Street project. However, this aggregate is tough to produce, and we're hauling it from a great distance. It's about a 2.5 hour haul here for the volume that we need for the 5th Street project. We're hauling a little bit at a time. It'll probably take us up to 10 additional days to haul that aggregate. So while we planned on starting that project on July 6th, right now where we sit, I would think we don't have all the aggregate in Raton for another 7 to 10 days. So aggregate is a tough part of committing that chip seal, and myself and the Public Works Director are really bringing this recommendation to you because we would then have that available here. We've got this large pile of material. We've seen a similar thing from DOT where they crushed up recycled millings and used those on Highway 72, used them going to Lake Maloya. And so that's typically a project that you can use these millings for. And then I think we would be set on that for some time. It would solve one of the major issues with chip sealing. And so, like I say, that's a recommendation that this commission can consider. And you don't have to decide on this tonight if you want to talk about this scope of work. We can certainly look at any scope of work that y'all might want to discuss. However, we have talked to Department of Transportation, and they said that would be a legitimate scope of work for these funds, and they would have to approve that scope of work. But we would anticipate beginning that process next spring or early next summer, and then from that point on have an annual chip sealing project. I'll hold it there, Mayor.
All righty, thank you. I have a couple questions, I guess. I got one, going to the Kearney project, what What kind of cost are we looking for that to actually?
We're looking at $150,000 to $200,000 to Kearney. Now, it really doesn't qualify for municipal arterial funds, and that seems to be a large amount for a co-op agreement project. Now, we did get, we were emboldened by a large award that we got for the Brilliant Hart Street project, where we got $150,000, and we thought we might see that again. So we've gone with Kearney, but we haven't seen those kind of dollars in the last couple of years. And so I think this local government road fund is generally evolving to more of the call for projects type of model that we talked about previously, but with unknown funding with DOT, we're not sure where that program is going. And so I think it's going to be a couple of years till we really know that. So realistically, we're looking at these kind of co-op dollars, which makes it really tough to undertake the Kearney project. I think Kearney is a bona fide need. It's not a great candidate for chip seal. It really needs reconstruction, but we're looking at that upwards of $200,000 for that project.
All right, thank you. Also, and then if we go with this to where we are going to be creating all of the chip seal and the milling stuff, reprocessing, my understanding is we are also looking at purchasing our own chip seal equipment and going in that direction in the future.
We have had that discussion internally here as far as looking at some of the equipment, like the chip spreader and a pneumatic roller. We think that we can find some used equipment fairly economically and get into that pretty quickly. The city did that before. It's been some years ago, but they own the equipment, and then that gives you a lot of control over how you can do that. So that would allow us to order a distributor load of the asphalt, do some selected areas. We could do that several times during the year, or we could do a bigger project as well. So I think it would streamline this process.
The DOT's all right with the 44,000 that we put it towards the crushing of all the...
They have indicated that they are all right with the scope of work and what we're proposing in this resolution, yes.
Great.
So I just have a question about Kearney itself, and with that project, is that, I'm assuming it's something that we can't phase because of the nature of the project, and where can we even look for that funding going forward? I think this is a great use of the funds, but
Yeah.
just...
We would have a limited ability to phase that project. The issue is that with the type of reconstruction that we're considering, it would include hot mix asphalt. Now, if we do a very small project, let's say a $100,000 project, there are not many contractors out there that pave with hot mix asphalt that would be interested in a very small project. I mean, typically, to get the attention of those kind of contractors, you know, we would look at a large project on the scale of maybe about $1 million. So when we put together a project like Hart and Brilliant, and that was a project over $200,000, we hope that we get some bids on that. And we've struggled with getting bids for projects like that or Hospital Drive. We did get those bid and we did get them constructed, but that's pretty small for what typically is a highway contractor doing multi-million, $10 million and up type of projects. So that's one issue with that type of reconstruction. But we would look for our opportunity. If we have a hot mix plant in the area and we have a contractor that we can would give us a bid on that, I think we would look to try to still get that in, and phasing then would make sense.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-48, acceptance of the New Mexico DOT Cooperative Agreement Control Number L400501 and pledge of matching funds.
We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2020-48. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item H, deliberate and act on bid award for crack sealing pavement preservation project. It's gonna be Mr. Barry or Mr. Phillips, I'm guessing.
Mayor and Commission, Public Works Director.
That was a low blow.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't take that stuff,
Mayor Commission, thank you this evening. We have in front of you a recommendation for award for the Convention Center mechanical renovations. As we've been discussing for about the last year.
Cracks,
we're on the
crack
crack
seal.
seal.
Oh, crack seal.
That's why he
Gave him the wrong word.
really threw you like.
We'll just go with.
I'll actually address this one then
Okay.
if you want. My apologies, Mayor and Commission, little bubble in
We need a
the
break
lineup
here or
there.
what?
We changed the lineup as we're going along, so, you know, in regard to the recommendation on crack seal pavement preservation project, this is the cooperative agreement project from the last year. The deadline on this would be December 31st of this year to expend these funds. We talked about the situation with Kearney Avenue, and we had discussed with the commission reassigning that award again to a different purpose, and our recommendation to the commission was we really are in need of crack sealing on streets. This generally, the candidate street would be something that was paved with hot mix asphalt within the last 10 years. And we have an extensive list of those. This is an important maintenance procedure because crack sealing will prevent moisture from entering those cracks, getting down to our subgrade, and that's where we see accelerated failure of these paved streets. And so we have a lengthy list of streets that need this. We bid the project. We received 4 bids. We did receive a very favorable bid from the low bidder, JR Striping Incorporated. You have the recommendation and the amount there in front of you. His bid for the list of streets that we provided was $47,900, and then we would add GRT onto that. We are within that funding for our co-op grant amount, and we would, upon your consideration here, proceed with that work as soon as JR Striping Inc. can mobilize to Raton. Now they're located in Anton Chico, that's in the Las Vegas area. So talking to Jose from JR Striping, he's ready to go to work. So we would proceed with this work rather quickly. I would say that we can mobilize him up here within maybe about 10 days. I've had a little problem with throwing those dates out before, but I think JR had indicated he would like to proceed quickly on the work. And then, even though it looks like an extensive list of streets that we would do, this one will go pretty quickly. And so, we recommend award to JR Striping Inc. Now, we have changed the scope of work with New Mexico Department of Transportation in regard to the co-op funding. And so I think we're ready to go on this and close this project out.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions, comments?
I will move to approve crack sealing pavement preservation project and award JR Striping Inc. the bid.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to award the bid to JR Striping Inc. for the crack sealing pavement preservation project. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, Mr. Phillips, item I, deliberate and act on bid award for Raton Convention Center, mechanical renovations.
Mayor and Commission, this evening we have for consideration the approval of the Convention Center mechanical renovations. Essentially what we're looking at is we had come to you a while back, the boiler system had failed, had completely lost its heating elements and had developed a rather large leak that we were unable to fix. That unit was fairly ancient, and as luck would have it, it's not easy to replace such a thing. The new plan actually requires 2 boilers. The benefit of that is we should gain energy efficiency. In addition to that, there were some thermostatic control issues and a number of piping issues that date all the way back to the retrofit from the building from the Armory to a convention center. Pretty extensive, complicated piping scheme, and the end result is we had two bids, $116,990 from Mozark LLC and $191,214 from Colt Builders. The $116,990 is about where we thought this project would come. We were actually worried that it would be 125 plus, maybe as much as 150. So we were happy to see the bids come in more in our price range. It's the kind of project you do it once, you do it right, it lasts for 30 years and none of us have to worry about it again. The timing on this project is perfect with the COVID restrictions. We haven't had any real use of the convention center since March, and we would anticipate that we could get this project up and running before Halloween when we start worrying about stuff freezing in the building. So it would be my recommendation to award it to Mozark LLC for the $116,990, and that is excluding DRT. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if y'all have any.
No, Mr. Phillips, just, you know, you're insinuating none of us are going to be here in 30 years, but, you know.
I was saying mostly me.
Okay.
I won't be retired.
Just wanted to
probably
clear that up.
No, and maybe not in the room, but still with us, at least in spirit, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the award for Mozark LLC in the amount of $116,990 for the Raton Convention Center mechanical renovations. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna abstain from this just because once in a while I work with the Mosen family, don't want,
Okay.
just wanna make it nothing related to this, but stay separated.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item J, deliberate and act on bid award for aquatic center mechanical system replacement project. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, I would say that we had said earlier, we really got the summer of infrastructure here, and so we've got quite a few projects that are in various phases of construction right now. We've completed several. We'll talk about progress on several other ones in the report to come, and we have been requesting bids on additional work. So we've got one last consideration here of award for this project. We'll talk about that a little bit. I would say that tomorrow we will be opening bids on an additional project. That would be replacement of the water line in 3rd Street here. That's utility work we would like to get out of the way before we get into the CDBG project, where we would resurface those streets. And so that water line is around 100 years old, and we would be replacing an old cast iron line with some new lines and new service lines. And one concern there is, in the real old section of town, you might have some lead services, and so at least for our part, we would replace something that might be an old lead service with something that's new. So a lot going on. It's really keeping everyone here busy, and a couple of consultants busy, and a couple of contractors busy. And so we're here to talk about a project in regard to the aquatic center. That's something that we have discussed now for a while. I'd say there are a number of issues that have come up with the aquatic center, and my comment would be, I think all of them, on one hand, the aquatic center has been in service for 9 years. It's not that we just started operations, and some of those systems run continuously over there. However, we're seeing some failures there that I think are premature to me. I think we're seeing really some issues regarding that stem from design and construction are not, I would expect some of these components to last longer than they have. We would expect some normal wear and tear, but we're seeing a number of things fail over at that facility. So we've limped along over there, but we have to address these issues. There's a number of them, And we're looking at replacement of some valves at the aquatic center. We've got a number of piping leaks, either in main piping or in some distribution piping. We've got some failure of walls in shower areas that are resulting from the leaks in those areas. We've got that in the men's shower facility, the women's shower facility, the family shower area, so that's been a prevalent problem over there. We've got some of the toilet stalls have corroded and will need to be replaced under this project. We've got we have a regenerative blower that has been out of service for a while. We'll replace that blower. So we've got a number of elements to this that are occurring both in the mechanical room and generally in the shower changing areas here. And so earlier we had really looked for a mechanical engineer that had some specific expertise in an aquatic facility like this, and we were really not successful in getting a response from any of those mechanical engineers that we contacted. We could have gone to the original mechanical engineer, and I'm really not happy with the performance of this system, so we didn't do that. So we really put this request for bids together in-house and put it out to bid. We did get one bid from, again, Mozark LLC. We're pleased that a local contractor looked at this, and their bid is for $55,000. Now, because we didn't have that mechanical engineer on board, we didn't really know what to expect from this bid. We expected that it could go as high as $100,000, so I'm pretty pleased with the bid amount that we have. And we're going to have to do a little investigation as we tear into this system, and probably a little bit of brainstorming as far as how these repairs go on some of the piping and some of the bigger systems. So I'll keep you up to date as we go through, but I am recommending an award to Mozark LLC in the amount of $55,000. The source of funding for this would be that quarter-cent increment that we talked about some years back that is dedicated to the aquatic facility for debt service, first of all, and then capital improvements are also allowed under that ordinance. So we would be using that source of funding. And I'll hold up there, Mayor, and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Murray?
How long the downtime will be?
I'm sorry, Commissioner?
Will there be a lengthy time, downtime?
You know, I think what we would plan on doing is, as Jason Phillips had said, we're looking at completing convention center work before we get into cold weather. We don't have a lot of activity going on at the aquatic center now, but I think we would look at completing the convention center, then moving over to the aquatic center, closing the aquatic center, and doing that. So I would anticipate that it would be fall-time work that we would do that. And other than the lap swimmers, we don't have much demand there, or much staff employed in the fall or winter. Typically, we've scaled down operations, but we would probably keep the facility closed while we're working on this, and that would give the contractor, unfettered access to all of these things simultaneously, and I think make for a smoother project. So I would tell you that we're really looking at an October 1st start date on this, and then complete it by the end of the year. But with your consideration of award, we can start with the ordering of some of the components that may take a while to get here, like the regenerative blower. So we can get those things coming.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll stay as well.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to award the contract for the aquatic center mechanical system replacement to Mozark LLC. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item K, deliberate and act on contract between the City of Raton and Envision IT Services for Raton Fire and Emergency Services. Michael Ann?
Mayor and Commission, at the last meeting, we had approved the contract which covers the city, Raton Waterworks, and Raton Public Service. I apologize, we did also have a copy of this in your packet. It was like attached with the other contract, but we didn't put it on the agenda as an item for approval. So anyway, we're bringing it back to you to formally approve the contract for the Raton Fire and Emergency Services. And so you'll see that their contract includes, this is a managed services contract to manage 9 workstations, 1 server, and then they also have the monthly data cloud storage services as well. So the total of their monthly contract is $1,332.26.
Alrighty, thank you. Any questions for Michael Ann or Mr. Murray?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract between the City of Raton and Envision IT Services for Raton Fire and Emergency Services.
We have a motion and a second to approve the contract between the City of Raton and Envision IT Services. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item L, deliberate and act on dispatch agreement between the City of Raton and Colfax County. Mr. Barrett.
Mayor and Commission, this is an item we've talked about in past years. City of Raton does operate the emergency 911 dispatch center here in City Hall and the Police Department. We do dispatch for a number of agencies, and that includes Colfax County. As far as the dollars that we look at any of these type of dispatch agreements, we really look at the call volume, and Colfax County is one of the higher volumes that we have. So in previous years we have arrived at this amount, and it's not changed from the previous agreement. So we're looking at $49,062 reimbursement under this agreement paid by Colfax County to the City of Raton. And then we have some similar dispatch agreements in place with other agencies as well. But the agreement is really the same as the expiring agreement. So we bring this to you. It's as a renewal of an existing agreement.
All righty, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Barry?
No, I'll move to approve the dispatch agreement between the City of Raton and Colfax County.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve the agreement between the City of Raton and Colfax County for the dispatch agreement. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item N, report to City Commission on certification and completion of the destruction of approved municipal court records. Michael Ann?
Mayor and Commission, as you'll recall, at a previous meeting back in November, we did approve a resolution. It was 2019-59, authorizing the municipal court to start to go through some of their records and clear out records that were eligible for destruction. The court clerk has prepared a listing of everything that she's worked on for the past 6 months. So hopefully you've had a chance to review it. It was in your packet. And then her and I have executed the certificate of destruction. And so as part of this process, we are just reporting back to you that this has been completed. And a copy of this will be placed in the minute book. Is there any questions?
Looks good to me. Thank you for the report.
So yeah, being that it's a report, there's no action.
Mr. Barry?
Mayor and Commission, we'll try to be pretty brief. There's a lot going on in City Hall right now. It's a pretty dynamic time, but I just wanted to update you on a couple of the infrastructure projects that we had talked about before. Of course, we had reported that the filter plant project, that's complete, and we had said that we need to schedule some opportunities for you to look at the new construction there, and so we're working on doing that, and we'll set that up and schedule those with you. Also, the Hospital Drive lift station is complete online. Those are both really functional now, and so those are a couple we can cross off the list. They're two projects that we talked about for a very long time. Another project we talked about for a long time is the Solid Waste Convenience Center, and we are in construction on that project. And so we've been working on grading, earthwork, and construction of foundation. And tomorrow morning we are going to pour the first concrete on the project. That is for the deep pier foundation. We'll do about 2/3 of the deep pier foundation, start on some foundation walls, floors, and then we have some additional piers while off. Now, we had estimated that we would complete construction about March 1st. However, the contractor is really progressing rapidly on the project. Could be sooner than that. I'll keep you posted on that, but we're pleased with the progress on that project. The other one that we've talked about for a while is the Great Blocks project. We have done an additional, an earlier phase of the project, and we're just started construction on the final phase of that, and that contractor is also proceeding rapidly. So you see a lot of new concrete down on First Street, specifically in the Rio Grande Avenue intersection. That's been kind of an eyesore in that intersection, and we talked about traffic congestion on Rio Grande in general. So this would be a part of that discussion of what we do on Rio Grande. We'll come back with additional signage, and I think the proposal to post that as a one-way street. But you do see some of this infrastructure going in. Really pleased with the progress on that as well. The Schuler Theater project, as we had reported earlier, we're waiting on some of the components. We've got some ceiling and floor that are really specific to the Schuler Theater, a bar structure that we're working with the contractor to install, but we'll come back and report wrapping that project up before too long. So not to go too deep into all of that going on, but that's just an update on a couple of things that we've talked about for a while. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. A couple of questions, or something real quick. It was brought up today that Senate Bill 8 requiring the cameras, the cost for the storage of the films online. Have we really looked into that? I know we have the cameras on our police force. Have we looked at the data storage?
So we generally comply with that requirement now. I mean, I'd have to really look at Senate Bill 8 as far as that storage, but it's not unusual that we would get public records requests for those lapel cam videos. We generally do store that, and we'll have to see how that's covered under our present IT contract, but I would say that we will do that evaluation. We generally comply with that requirement currently.
Yeah, they listed the price today, and I meant to bring it tonight, I didn't, but it's quite expensive to store.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Recordings online.
We'll have to review the legislation, review our process, make sure that we're in compliance with it. Well, I say generally, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have to do something additional. I'll report back to you on that. But I would just say that generally we do that now. But there could be a period of time that's
120
stored.
days.
Yeah.
Currently in the SBA, you've got to store it for a minimum of 120 days.
Right.
And if it's something that could possibly end up going further, then you've got additional storage and fees.
We'll do an evaluation on that and report back to the commission.
Senate Bill 8, it was during the special session.
Special session.
Yeah. There was something else, but I forgot. You've been here long enough. Is there any other comment? Commissioner Chatterley?
Nothing.
Commissioner Giacomo? Commissioner Chavez, Mayor Pro Tem? Seeing nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Good job, guys.